You might recall the infamous blood test that could change the world, which turned out to be one of Silicon Valley's biggest frauds. At the center of it all was Elizabeth Holmes, once hailed as the female Steve Jobs. In 2022, Holmes was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in prison. She has now served nearly 2 years of her sentence. Recently, People magazine conducted her first interview since she went to prison, and it turns out her life behind bars isn't quite what most people might expect. She still carries herself like a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, never admitting guilt, still brainstorming new patents, and even preparing for her eventual return to the business world. This past February, People interviewed Holmes in a drab prison visitation room. Gone were her signature black turtlenecks. Instead, she wore a khaki prison uniform, her face makeup-free, a silver cross hanging around her neck. Her voice no longer had that calculated deep tone, but one thing hadn't changed: her insistence that she's innocent. Although her sentence has been reduced to 9 years, she still refuses to plead guilty. "I won't admit to crimes I didn't commit," she said. Theranos failed, but it wasn't fraud. Holmes had 2 children during her trial and right before going to prison. When authorities came to arrest her, she was reportedly using a high-tech breast pump, the LV pump, to collect milk for her newborn. As for prison life, she's not spending her days sewing uniforms, she's helping fellow inmates write resumes and prepare for life after release, earning a modest 31 cents per hour. Her daily routine still resembles that of a startup founder, waking up at 5 a.m., having some fruit, and exercising for 40 minutes, jogging, lifting weights, or using a rowing machine. By 8 a.m., she's at work writing documents, serving as a legal aid, and even teaching French. Once a week, she undergoes PTSD counseling and behavioral therapy. Even in prison, Holmes maintains her signature Silicon Valley mindset. She has become a vegetarian and spends her free time reading the I Ching, the Fear book by Zen meditation teacher Sherry Huber, and Harry Potter. And yet, despite a prison routine that includes a plant-based diet, regular workouts, 10-minute daily phone calls with her family, weekly half-day visits where she plays with her children, and the occasional Harry Potter break, Holmes describes her incarceration as a living hell. Her frustration seems to stem less from the conditions of her sentence and more from the fact that her entrepreneurial ambitions were cut short. Still insisting on her innocence, she recently drafted a 7-page handwritten document titled the American Freedom Act, hoping to push for reforms in the U.S. criminal justice system. At the same time, she's brainstorming new patents and planning to re-enter the healthcare field once she's released. She even successfully lobbied the prison warden to establish multiple lactation rooms so mothers behind bars could continue breastfeeding their children. "I spend every single day researching and inventing. I'm still committed to my dream of making healthcare affordable for everyone," she declared. "The truth will prevail. I walk by faith, and in the end, truth will guide me." Throughout the interview, she repeatedly spoke of the pain of being separated from her children, but never once expressed remorse. If anything, Theranos 2.0 may already be taking shape in her mind. A famous saying perfectly captures Elizabeth Holmes' rise and fall: one moment, she's building a grand mansion; the next, she's hosting lavish banquets, and before you know it, the whole thing comes crashing down. In 2003, at just 19 years old, Holmes dropped out of Stanford to start Theranos, a blood testing company in Silicon Valley. By 2013, Theranos was valued at nearly $10 billion, boasting thousands of employees and the image of a wildly successful startup. At 31, Holmes was named the world's youngest self-made female billionaire by Forbes and landed on Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people of 2015. A year later, her net worth plummeted from $4.5 billion to zero. Soon after, she was federally indicted on 11 counts of wire fraud. But let's take a step back. How exactly did Holmes manage to fool some of the most powerful people in America and cement her legacy as one of Silicon Valley's greatest fraudsters? At the heart of Theranos' promise was a device called Edison, which supposedly could run 200 different blood tests from just a few drops of blood, delivering results within 4 hours. It was pitched as a revolutionary one-drop to diagnose it all technology, even capable of detecting cancer. And the kicker? Each test cost only $2.99. Holmes often shared a personal, emotional backstory. She claimed she started Theranos after losing a loved one to a preventable disease due to a lack of early testing. She insisted she wasn't in it for the money. Her mission was to make the world a better place. A founder with a compelling story, brandishing both idealism and disruptive technology. It was the perfect Silicon Valley fairy tale. Investors lined up, eager to get a piece of the $76 billion U.S. blood testing market. Holmes masterfully played into Silicon Valley's tech optimism and the deep-pocketed, aging elite's obsession with biotech. The result? A star-studded list of backers. Theranos' 12-member board included 2 former U.S. Secretaries of State and 2 former Secretaries of Defense. Holmes was casually exchanging laughs with Henry Kissinger, while media mogul Rupert Murdoch, the Walton family of Walmart, and Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison poured money into her vision. With an investor lineup like that, who wouldn't be convinced? In reality, Edison was nothing more than a standard blood testing device, capable of running only 12 basic tests, a far cry from the 200+ it claimed. Worse still, its results were wildly inaccurate, leading to misdiagnoses of miscarriages, prostate cancer, and even HIV in different patients. To cover up these flaws, Theranos secretly sent blood samples to third-party labs, where they were analyzed using conventional medical equipment. The company then falsely attributed the results to Edison, making it seem as if their proprietary technology had worked as promised. Calling this low-tech would be generous, it was pure smoke and mirrors. And yet, the trick was simple enough to fool everyone. Inside Theranos, employees were bound by strict non-disclosure agreements. When Edison produced faulty results, engineers were instructed to tweak the algorithms or outright delete anomalous data. Externally, when anyone pressed for technical details, Holmes would dodge the questions, waving them off as proprietary trade secrets. She carefully crafted the image of the female Steve Jobs, always dressed in a black turtleneck, deliberately lowering her voice to sound more authoritative, and speaking in a deep, philosophical tone about her vision and company's mission. Silicon Valley and Wall Street ate it up, and for a time, she was unstoppable. The public was captivated by this 30-year-old entrepreneur and her promise to revolutionize biotech in a way that would impact everyone's lives. But a scam can only last so long. 2-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist John Carreyrou began investigating Theranos after receiving tips from former employees. His exposé, published in the Wall Street Journal, unraveled the elaborate deception behind the company. Ironically, the Wall Street Journal was owned by Rupert Murdoch, who also happened to be Theranos' largest individual investor. At the time, Holmes brushed off the allegations in interviews, saying, "When you're disrupting an industry, they call you crazy at first. Then they try to take you down. And then, you change the world." She even resorted to the classic celebrity move of issuing legal threats, claiming the reports were nothing more than lies and defamation spread by jealous competitors. Eventually, U.S. health regulators launched investigations, business partners pulled out, and patients filed lawsuits seeking damages. Theranos faced multiple legal battles before ultimately dissolving. Holmes was convicted of fraud, sentenced to 11 years in prison, and ordered to pay a staggering $452 million in restitution. During the 3 years leading up to her trial, the media turned her story into a cautionary tale. HBO released a documentary, Hulu dramatized her downfall and the dropout, and John Carreyrou's Bad Blood became a bestseller. Medical experts thoroughly debunked Holmes' so-called vision, exposing it as pure delusion. But she refused to listen. Her obsessive hunger for fame and power eventually landed her behind bars. At the height of Theranos' success, Holmes burned through investors' money while basking in the privileges of wealth and celebrity. When the company began to crumble, she silenced employees with aggressive non-disclosure agreements and pressured them to keep faking results. And when her trial loomed, she made a calculated move, having 2 children, only to later leave them in the shadow of an absent mother. Was she truly intoxicated by her own change-the-world fantasy? Or was she a narcissist, coldly orchestrating one fraud, and perhaps planning the next?